If you're good, it's time to press the button.
Okay. Howdy.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
How are you? Howdy. Howdy yourself.
Howdy. Coming back into my own, and apparently I was a cowboy.
I like it. That's good. Was that Boots song was on earlier too from the 90s.
Yeah.
Good afternoon or good evening. Hello everybody. Welcome back. Today is Wednesday, April 10th, 2019. My name is Jay Ryan. This is Nicole Ryan. We are the Ryans, and this is It's Tonight's Show. Our guest this evening is going to be Sue KOLINSKY. She's a comedian from a while back. She's worked on a lot of shows, written on a lot of shows, produced a lot of shows. We're going to have a lot in common, and I think the conversation is going to be just fine today.
We already have a friend in common, Kathy Ladman.
Mutual friend Kathy Ladman, who's been here.
Awesome
We
comedian,
love Kathy
funny
Ladman.
lady, super helpful gal. So.
And one of the warmest people. When she sat here, it was just like, I'm not an aura reading that, but like, glowing in the chair.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I agree.
How the heck are you doing today?
I have leveled up.
Yeah, you look like it. You act like it, too. You're here today. I mean, you're really here. Really, really here.
Really here. Yeah, presence is a big deal, and positivity is a big deal. But neurologically, I leveled up. And I forget, have you seen Steel Magnolias?
No,
Okay.
After all these years, I've still never seen it.
Well, for anyone who has, what I gotta go through longer than she did in the movie. Like Julia Roberts has these spells, these diabetic spells, where she just goes, her sugar drops really low apparently. And
She's the nerdy one, right? She got the glasses and stuff in that movie?
I
Like,
don't
of
think
everybody?
So she's really young.
Oh, no, that's Daryl Hannah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, okay, got it.
She's really young. But so anyway, she goes in these diabetic shocks and she just acts like a nut and she's just low blood sugar, and it's before anyone knew about any of it. And so that's kind of what I feel like I go through a lot. And then
somebody who doesn't necessarily regulate and or be able to monitor their gauges. And then all of a sudden they're out of gas. And then whatever. Moody.
yes, there's just a lot of factors that I think I have under control, like temperature and pressure and stuff and what I eat.
Things
And
you
it
think
all
you do have
changed.
under control, is that what you're saying?
Things that I think I'm aware of that I have a low level awareness of, but not enough to modulate myself sometimes. So my medicine has to change and what I eat has to change.
Gotcha.
So here I am. Today's a good one.
Well, I don't mean to change. Congratulations on that. I don't mean to change the subject too much, except that when we watched the show last night, when I was editing the show, I saw that I still had this on, and I thought to myself, that's weird that you haven't noticed that since Saturday. Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what day. Can you please hand me a pair of scissors from that drawer
Sure.
there?
Oh my.
I will say this: whoever put it on, it was put on that well, and or I've been so preoccupied with other. My mind's been so busy with other things, I don't even realize when things are hanging off my body.
Oh.
Anyway, that's
Well
that.
done.
That was from the PEC Saturday thing, the morning shift. If it's okay, Mrs. Ryan, I know you normally handle the news, but I have a little bit of news today, and it's not really good news, but it's something I feel we should talk about just because it happened this morning, and
Okay.
it's fucking my jaw is still dropped over it. I don't know if you spent any time on social media this morning, or probably not so much just by the look of it. So you probably don't know what I've posted. All right, well, this isn't news to anybody else in the world, but to our little car community, it's a big deal. To us specifically, because we've had these people here on the show, what you're looking at right there is a fire and explosion in a collapsed building, and right to the left of it with a partially on fire collapsed building. That's the Ingram Collection. That's a chopper shot into, there's a 911R right there. There's an old 4.0 right there. There is a 550 Spider right there. We've seen a million videos shot in this room. This is what it looked like a few minutes before. There was a gas explosion apparently this morning. Police contractor digging under gas line led to explosion and collapse. Also, there were apparently some fatalities there. I don't believe it was anybody that we know or from even our place. I have a feeling it's probably whoever was digging or whatever. It's just a terrible thing.
That's awful.
But we know so many, they've sat in these chairs right here, and we know so many people that know and love the Ingrams and everybody involved, Charles Stanley, obviously, the people that we know directly. But it's just a crazy, shitty thing going on in our Porsche world today. That's really, really crazy, but I wanted to talk about it up front just to let you guys know. I mean, holy crap, everybody loves you, and we're so glad that your people are okay. The cars are just cars. We love them. They're special, but it's just stuff. Glad all our people are okay. And thoughts to everybody else, though, the responders and obviously those who didn't fare as well in the situation. But I just want to talk about that up front. There we go, out of the way.
Okie doke.
It was heavy, but it was on my mind, and I felt like I just needed to get it out.
Have to address it. Elephant in the room.
Well, those pictures are pretty stunning.
Yes.
All right, well, let's get back on with the actual show here. And check it, we've got a new segment.
Oh. Oh.
Checking in with Steph Curtis and her Bonjour tour. Roll it out.
Bonjour. We are here at the Palace of Versailles in France, and we just got here. We're a little late. We have about an hour and 20 minutes to see this whole thing, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Thankfully, I have my sneakers on, but this is just unreal, this view here. I will be back soon.
Oh, that's so...
How much do you love her?
Love her.
All right, so basically what happened there is we told Steph, hey, you're going on this trip. She was here like the day before she left for that trip. You remember? Mm-hmm. She's like, I haven't packed or anything yet. And we said, well, hey, you're bringing your phone. You're a blogger, vlogger anyway. Why not do some stuff for us? So let's check in once again. I think she's on the other side. Roll it out.
Wow. So we are in the courtyard, and I should probably go back over towards the area where the greenery and the water is, because I was in such awe at the scenery that I forgot to take a video.
Been there.
Oh, that girl's
Man,
awesome.
have we ever been there.
I can't wait to see her. I hope it was a great trip.
Same here. In the meantime, let us check in back over in the East Coast, see what Kaz is up to at Danbury Chive, Richfield BMW. Roll it, Hal.
Mr. and Mrs. Ryan, it's a little East Coast feed time. It's hailing after liquid lunch, and Brooke is covering her fucking head because it's actually hailing, if you can see it hitting. And she's having a good hair day, except for right about now where there's hail. Welcome to Connecticut in fucking April.
East Coast.
I mean, I remember those days. I know exactly what he's going through.
Totally.
Sure. Totally unpredictable.
Those days are the worst.
Holy crap. All right. Go back to France, I believe. We're in France, right? Is that where that is?
Yeah.
Is that where she is? Okay. Hence the bonjour.
So, no words.
Boy, that's pretty. There's the stage. She's getting the hang of it. It's her first time. You know what I mean? It's her first time. I got one more.
Okay.
Right. Still step. Bonjour.
It's pretty chilly over here, and I know I'm a New Yorker, so my parents would probably yell at me for saying that because it's probably like 55 degrees, but I can't even put into words the beauty of this place. This is like one of my favorite parts of this whole trip. And we got here an hour and a half before it closed. We almost didn't even come because it was an hour train ride from where we're staying. We figured it out because we are stylish problem solvers.
That should be her new blog. Stylish problem solvers.
Oh, hilarious.
Isn't that funny?
It's so
Oh my
funny.
goodness. All right, Mrs. Ryan. Well, that's all the stuff I have to get through.
All right.
So in that case, it's time to ask the question that's on everyone's mind.
Dun, 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 dun.
What's going on, Mrs. Ryan?
Ron Funches.
Oh,
Is that
I
how
love
you
Ron
say
Funches.
his name?
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
love Ron
Okay.
Funches.
He is...
Skittles. He's the greatest.
I don't know what I know him from. I know that I went to Vegas with him one time, and so I was on a plane with him.
Maybe it's that.
No, but I mean, his work and stuff.
Oh, I
I know
see.
he's on that Chris D'Elia show and Dateable, but I didn't watch it, so I don't
see.
know.
Gotcha.
Anyway, he has an autistic son, which I did not know
I
about.
didn't either. No kidding.
He's a single dad of an autistic kid. It's nuts. But his whole approach to why he still does comedy and why he talks about his kid when he does comedy is like, everyone that I talk about knows I love them. And I make it really clear. He's like one of the most positive people and positive comedians out there. So he's leading the charge of bringing this back, which is why I wanted to really make sure to talk about this.
Okay.
Because I didn't know he had noticed his dickhead.
I like him anyway.
I
like him
love that guy.
More now.
But he's taking on a totally new approach to comedy because he's kind of an observational guy like we are, of like, this is life, this is what goes on, this is what it is. And he finds the humor in these weird moments.
He's very dry, very subtle. I love his writing. I love his delivery.
Yeah, but his whole thing about his act is like, I have to talk about my kid. I'm not making fun of my kid, but my kid's got autism and some moments are odd.
Wow.
And so I adore him.
That's honesty. That's truth.
Total. It's like the realest authenticity that's out there, and I hate that word. But he's so...
It's good. It's better with the qualifier real before authenticity, of course, always.
I know, I bungled it, but it's just a silly word. But he's so real, and so he's talking about autism in a really honest way.
Awesome.
He wants to make it very clear that he loves people he talks about, and that's his comedy, and I love him for it.
Yeah, I agree. He's also, he's dropped a ton of weight. He's doing great in general.
Totally.
And his stock is rising. He's awesome. Big fan.
He's rad. I saw him on Joe Rogan, the podcast.
Oh,
so
recently?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I got to watch that. Thanks.
Yeah, tune in. Keeping with my positive day, Magic Johnson is showing what self-preservation looks like on a high financial level.
This is so interesting. This is the Magic Johnson news you have today?
Yeah.
I think our sports fan guest might have a little different news, but all right, go ahead.
Well, that's my perspective on probably
wonderful.
the same news. He's stepping down from being president.
Oh, that's what I knew. So this is directly related, the two things.
His quote for why he left is, I want to go back to what made, I want to go back to what makes me happy and what I have fun doing.
Is that a late night talk show by any chance?
No, I don't think so.
You remember our friend Craig Shoemaker, of course. Well, oh, Craig, you bad.
That's funny. No, I didn't put that together, but that's what he said.
Mark Brazil, I think, or somebody. I don't want to miscredit it, but somebody we know. I think it was him. Somebody. I don't want to say it now. I don't want to say it because I don't want to misquote it. Somebody made a funny joke about it, but I don't want to say it now because I don't want to say the wrong person. Having already potential. It was funny though. It was pretty good. They were saying basically Phil Jackson's going to be back. He'll be the new team owner, manager.
Oh, well, maybe. Yeah.
We'll
who knows? To me, it just reeks of that Jim Carrey quote of like, I want everyone to have what you think you want. And experience it, and then figure out what you want. And so Magic Johnson's whole thing is like, I'm not happy anymore. I want to be happy. So he's going to step down.
Cool.
Tech guys are coming out with their own subjective approach to personal wellness.
Ooh.
And they're having to be public about it, I don't think on purpose, but they seem to be embracing it.
This is what I'm trying to think. I'm going to use Tim Cook here. This is what like a Tim Cook would do to keep his head on straight. What's his routine? How does he keep his what is his personal routine type of thing? Like it's not, maybe it is gym, meditation, like all those type of things.
This article specifically is about the Twitter CEO, Jack Dorsey.
Oh, great.
Because he only eats once a day. And everyone's like all up in arms about it. And he's like, I had to slow myself down. And my wellness was realizing what I paid attention to. And like as a culture, we spend so much time on food, whether it's at dinner reservations or who you're eating with, or what you're eating. We've turned it into a social thing. And so his whole thing is like, food's fine, but to me it sounds like what the dead Apple guy, Steve Jobs, said about clothes. It's like, I don't need to spend that much time. I don't like it that much.
Right.
So he just eats
it's not important.
once a day.
Yeah.
And he intermittent fasting.
I love that. I mean, I was that way since I was a kid. I mean, it's just like, I can't stand meal time. That's time to eat. Well, how about when I'm hungry, it's probably time to eat, right? I mean, that's like my logic. Yeah.
So I'm slow to embrace stuff like that. But all these people, whether it's like being a good comedian and not making fun of people, or if it's just like, I don't like to eat all the time,
right? Like
proclivities that make us weird or different.
Anybody who doesn't,
everyone's owning it.
I don't want. It's not nonconformity. It's not that so much. It's just that if your way is working for you, then that's better. Generally, if what you're doing is better for you and it doesn't hurt anybody else, man, that's a win-win.
I think what's getting lost is that everyone is thinking that they're doing it. People are doing things thinking other people will do what they do, or that, and really they don't care.
Like influencing?
Yeah, and Jack Dorsey's like, you can eat all day long. I just,
oh, right. I'm not
like,
telling you not to eat. He's just saying that's what. Yeah, same here. That's the same thing.
What we do, and like when you're so nice and you grab my hand, it's like you can read my eyes when I'm like falling down. It's like we don't always hold hands. We're not always cutesy, so it's not like when people try to.
It happens to be in events around other people because
Yeah.
that's when your energies and your walls are low, and that's when you do tend to need it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone, people that
Don't do it at home because you don't need it.
right.
Yeah.
So it's just I adore people that are just saying this is just how I am. So that's just how it is.
Love it.
And then
Don't be afraid to be yourself.
Totally.
That was my post-it. Make your own soup.
yeah.
Doesn't matter what make it how you like it. Nobody else knows how you like it. You know how you like it.
Yeah, and no one else has to eat it. It's fine. And then lastly, speaking of awesomeness, the Texas State Fair is really leading the charge on sensitivity issues. And they've got
What?
special hours this year where they're like, no sound, no noise, no lights through the main thoroughfare of the fair so that people that have sensitivity just can enjoy it too. Because it's...
Wait, people who have boy, I don't know how to say this. Sensitive people who are extra sensitive, just in general, photosensitive, whatever, autosensitive, they're going to turn the light. It's like kitty hour at the haunted house, basically. No shit.
yeah. There's like early morning hours one day a week so that people
I mean, maybe
can
don't go
and
to the
enjoy.
fair if you're having that kind. I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, it's nice. It's nice.
You might not love it, but you might. I
No,
love
it's nice
going.
of them to offer it. I'm just thinking like people should take some personal responsibility too.
Absolutely, but I appreciate that they're giving an option where it's not blaring music, and like I just like stuff quieter sometimes. So like,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like maybe you wouldn't go to the fair. Maybe the fair is that's the fair. No, I'm not fighting you. I'm saying that would be maybe another
what I appreciate about this movement is that it's more communal for everyone.
more
Like,
understanding, certainly.
Yeah, and so like I just appreciate that they're doing it.
Agreed.
I don't necessarily have to go, and it's in Texas. I probably won't go, but it's a nice thing to keep in mind that like it's better for everyone to enjoy something together than to make it about what you want all the time.
Oh,
Like,
I see.
turn the
Compromise.
sound
In your mind, this is a compromise.
Yeah.
Well, of course. I'd be salute. There you go.
Thanks. That's what's going on.
Oh, and that's
today.
been. Oh my God! And that's been what's going on. Dun, 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 dun. All right, Mrs. Ryan, let us take a quick break. We will get our guest in here. Pretty excited about this, actually.
Yeah.
Sue Kolinsky is going to be here, sitting right there in that chair when we come back. More to come right after this. everybody good? Mm-hmm. In that case, we're back. We're sitting here with Sue KOLINSKY. How are you?
I'm good.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I've just seen you on my computer. So I'm
how
honored.
How was it?
It was good. It was clear. I could hear everything. You guys look good on computer.
We're pushing for quality. We're going to figure out the content later, but right now we want the production design and everything good, like you said.
Yeah, this is amazing. I am like completely I marvel at what you did here.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, you probably can tell the moment you get in here, it's all forced perspective.
It's just, just the fact that you have this studio in your house.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Is the most, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Spike Ferriston sent me a message the other day. He was a writer on Seinfeld.
Yeah, I know
and,
Spike.
He sent me a message the other day saying, how did you get all this stuff? And all, of course, that comes to mind, and he and Jerry were talking about it, all that comes to mind is the Kramer's Apartment, Merv Griffin set.
Oh, that's so funny.
And it's one of those like, yeah, okay, it started that way. I feel like we've sort of turned it into its own thing at this point.
I mean, this is like a high-tech clubhouse. I mean, this is,
It's our little late night play set.
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
we were talking about that before. It's like what people do now. Like she knows someone that has a whole theater in their apartment.
She's a friend of Kathy Ladman's.
No
She
kidding.
owns the theater. She lives in an apartment building in West Hollywood, and she broke through to the apartment next door, and part of the apartment is like a 30-something seat theater.
Like a black box theater to
yeah,
do...
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. And then the back part is her living space.
I mean, I want to make fun of that, but truly that sounds like a dream to me because
It
I'm
is.
so creative. I love living in that space.
Right.
Made our bonus room into a little black box theater.
Yeah, so she's a director and a writer. Her husband is an actor, and they put on plays. And a lot of people, like I was trying to sell a show, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And she let us, come in, gratis, and do our presentation there.
Oh, because it's a great room just to do anything.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
that-
And
wow,
Kathy
wow.
actually, when she was shopping around, when she's been working on a one-woman show,
Mm-hmm.
and when she first started doing it, she did some nights there.
Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so it's very cool.
I can't wait to see her show.
I know. I want to see the space because I want to see what I could do. You know what I mean? I get that's
Yeah,
how I get
yeah,
the
totally.
ideas.
Yeah, it's very
That's my
inspiring.
inspiration. All right. Well, let's. I mean, you're here, so we should probably talk about you a little bit,
Well, okay.
if you don't mind.
I mean, I did come from Long Beach, though.
If you don't mind. Now, there's the trek against the race traffic. Well, let's start with where you're from. How'd you grow up? That stuff.
Okay. I'm originally from New York,
Oh, nice.
born in Brooklyn.
No shit.
There was a time in my life when I was a little kid that I thought everybody in the world was born in Brooklyn
Yeah.
and then moved.
Yep.
That was the scope of people in my life. And then we moved to Long Island when I was I was like 3. So I grew up in Long Island, moved into
Where
the
in
city.
Long Island?
South Shore, Belmore.
I'm from Connecticut, just across the Sound.
Oh, okay. There you go. Tri-state.
Yeah.
And
We seem to have more in common with Long Islanders than, say, New Yorkers or New Jerseyans or any of that stuff.
Okay.
yeah, like Jerry Seinfeld and I were on the same train line on the Long
The
Island
LIRR.
Railroad. And at a very young age, I actually was an impressionist. I started out as a stand-up as an impressionist. So I did impressions when I was a little kid. I grew up during the era, and I don't know if you know this guy, Vaughn Meter. Did you have? Oh,
I'm aware.
Okay,
from,
so-
from the the YouTubes,
okay. So Vaughn Meter
black
looked
and white, babe.
just like John Kennedy, and he did an uncanny impression of him. And Buck Henry and a couple of other brilliant writers, they wrote. It was an album called The First Family. So that played in my house all the time.
Oh, so then it played in your head.
So it played in my head. So I learned how to do John Kennedy as a kid. Like I was 5.
Was that your first?
I was like
one,
5 years
probably?
old, So there was a one of the sketches. John and Jackie are giving a tour of the White House, and John takes them into the bathroom, and he's talking about all the rubber toys that are in the bathtub, and he says, "And the rubber swan is mine." So that was my first impression, and it's funny because my parents had a friend who was he was a stand-up comedian. So when I was growing up, I was in elementary school, and he was a Borscht Belt comic, and he never gained the fame of like Alan King and Shecky Green, but he was a working comic. He worked up in the mountains in New York, and he did a couple of
The
movies,
Catskill shows.
the Catskill shows, and his son worked at a commercial agency in Manhattan. So he asked me to come in and meet the people because there's this little kid in Long Island who does impressions.
Like legit.
Legit. So I have 3 older brothers, so they took me into the city. And, in the waiting room, they bring me in, and I just looked at the guy, and I said, as Humphrey Bogart, I said, hand over the contract, and I'll sign on the dotted line. And they looked at me like,
Still
oh,
good
my
today.
God. And my mother just was afraid for me to enter show business at a young age. She thought it was going to really screw me up. And all her friends were like, she's going to end up on the couch, And,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
so my mother said to me, look, if it's something that, and I have a sister who's a little bit older than her, and I was getting a lot of attention. Like I went to an acting school when I was a little kid, and my sister started to withdraw, and it really upset my mom. And she said, if this is something you want to do when you're older, do it then. But she said, I'm not a stage mother. I'm not schlepping you from Long Island to Manhattan. I'm just not going to do it.
Wow.
So I started doing stand-up when I was like, I think the first time I did it at a club in New York, I was maybe like 18 or 19 years old.
Do you think your mom was right?
I guess,
I mean, to keep you, to shelter you a little bit, to keep that wall up a little longer?
it's a difficult question to answer because, that was how she felt. And I think.
You were ready for it, though, is what I'm getting out of this.
Yeah, I guess,
No, I mean, like, maybe she was right. Here's what I got. You didn't just do Humphrey Bogart in there. You wrote a joke. You wrote a joke real quick on the fly. You know what I mean? With the contract thing. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't come in there with that.
No, I didn't.
I'm thinking to myself today that might get someone the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So a kid, it's really disarming, and then maybe your mom was right. I don't know. I'm trying to play these things out.
Well,
all the way to
also,
the
I
end,
think, different time, and obviously a different type of parent,
Yeah.
because there are parents now, if they had a kid like me, they would be like,
Oh.
you
Meal
are
ticket.
going into show business
Meal ticket.
now,
They
Yeah,
would
exactly.
milk that for whatever.
So I guess I, just have to respect that she did what she felt was right at the time, and,
All right. So how old were you when you said you started doing stand-up?
I was around 18. I had my godmother actually. She had a woman who lived in her building who was a wardrobe mistress for films.
Oh.
So when I guess I was a teenager, Faye Dunaway was doing network,
Oh my God.
and she
Legendary.
she was in charge of all the wardrobe. So she asked me if I wanted to come to the set to meet her. I was like, yeah. So I went and I met Faye Dunaway, and she was actually married to what's his name from Jay Giles' band, Peter Wolf.
Wow.
So he happened to be there visiting her. So I got to meet him, and she told me, I didn't know anything about comedy clubs or anything show businessy in the city. But she knew
Your experience with comedy was solely from the records and stuff?
it was solely from the records.
Wow,
It was
okay.
like so the comedy that we listened to in the house was The First Family, and then Flip Wilson was
Oh, I
huge
love
in my
Flip
house.
Wilson. Geraldine, the whole bit.
Geraldine.
Loved it,
So
yeah.
I did Flip Wilson too. It's like Chris
He
going
was
fine, Ray
great.
Charles.
Yeah.
So I did Flip Wilson. Anything that was that I could mimic in the house, I did. So she told my godmother about there was this theater club in the city, and they were doing variety shows, and you could if you sang, danced, did comedy, anything. You could go in an audition, and they had this show. So I went.
Like a dinner theater kind of thing?
It was actually like a theater,
Oh, okay.
but it was like a theater group basically. It was basically like a theater group, but they took outside people and produced shows.
It sounds kind of cool.
It was
Like,
really
very
cool.
creative.
Yeah, it was great. So I went there and I wrote an act with using all my impressions, and my hook was that I did the wives of all of these famous men. So I was
Nice.
like Howard Cosell's wife, but it
were
was
you
Howard,
doing the
and they
man's- yeah,
but they
each
sounded
one.
just like their husbands.
Right.
That
That's
was
very funny.
my shtick.
So that's your being a girl doing the male impression.
Exactly.
Really funny.
Exactly. So
See, again, you're very creative. You're very
no.
smart. Holy smokes.
So then someone told me about the improv, the improvisation, and on 44th and 9th, the iconic club, the original one, and they said, that it's a strictly a comedy club. You should go down there and audition, and I did, and I passed like the first time.
Ugh.
But I thought that every time you went on stage, you had to do a different act. Because I didn't know anybody.
I thought
I
the
didn't
same
even have
thing
any
at first.
stand-up friends.
I thought the exact same thing at first.
You did?
Yes, and I used to say, "Oh, I've already seen this one." Like if somebody would do it on, blah blah blah, and then I saw it on Carson, but they were on the Improv or whatever, and I thought, "Oh, I've already seen this one." I didn't realize that until years later.
Well, I thought you had to do a different act in a nightclub. I mean, I can see doing a different act on doing a TV set. You can't do the same one. But in a nightclub,
Well, to me, there was no difference, but I get your point.
yeah. So you're cultivating your act. You're polishing it. So most of the time, people were doing the same thing all the time. Barring like a random ad lib or something.
Crowd work or whatever.
So the next time I went, I had to only come on Sunday. I wasn't like a regular yet.
Okay.
So I wrote a completely different act, and it wasn't as good
So much work.
as the other one. So they still said you can come back on Sundays, and then finally I got the word that you can call in for spots.
Ooh.
And that was like, oh.
Is that the equivalent of a regular?
That's a
these
regular.
Days?
Oh,
These
yeah.
days? Yeah.
Sure.
That's it. So
Sure.
I'm available. Oh, great.
And
come
it's
on
not
down.
that you're going to get them right away, but just that the fact that they give you
You'll take the
that
they'll
honor.
Take the call.
You're
to
allowed
call
to
in.
call.
You're
Wow.
allowed to
There's
call.
different rules in entertainment. I had to learn that the hard way when I came out here and started
It's definitely it's the tap on the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a sign of we think you're good enough to grace our stage.
And then, because once you're on the one, then you can use that to anybody else you go, right? Well, I'm a regular at the Improv. So,
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and then the next level to that was obviously getting spots, and then to me back then making it was bumping somebody at a club.
Oh my gosh.
Was to be able to walk in and say, "Oh, Sue Kolinsky's here. You're not going on. Sue, you're next."
Did that happen to you? Is that why you felt that?
No, it never happened to me.
Really?
Well, nah. I mean,
I feel like that. I thought that just happened to everybody.
no. I mean, because then I just got spots, but I wasn't like like Richard Belzer was the big act
Love Belzer.
when I first started in New York, and
She only knows him from Law and Order, but I used to love his comedy too.
Oh yeah, his comedy he was so funny.
I've heard that, but then that means he's a really good actor because I just know him as like a weird detective guy.
Well, you saw him on the Paul Provenza show, the Green Room. Do you remember
Yeah.
that show?
Oh yeah, sure.
And the one with Rick Overton, and they had the Mick Jagger off.
Yeah.
When Rick Overton was here, I think we played it.
Dude,
so
it's
funny.
crazy.
The Jaggeroff.
Yeah, I said it. Not appropriate anymore. Gee whiz. Okay, so then what's the next? I don't understand how you got from there to doing TV shows and stuff, and I'm sure at some point there's going to be a big gap. But right now you're still performing.
Yeah. So I did stand up. I was I started like seriously making a living as a stand-up comedian in 1984.
Oh.
I moved out to L.A. in 1980, and I started in New York, but I wasn't getting stage time. So I came out here and lived out here for 4 years. I was still working. I had a civilian job. I worked for a lawyer. I was a legal secretary.
Okay.
But he was the coolest guy in the world. Like, I answered an ad in the LA Times, and I was looking for a waitress job, basically, because that's what I knew how to do, and I figured that would be very flexible.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a waitress job. So I...
The talent pool was too big.
It's
huh?
unbelievable.
Holy
I guess
cow.
all the actresses out here had waitress jobs.
So that's still how it goes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I answered this ad, and this was verbatim. It was like crazy lawyer looking for crazy secretary, flexible hours, blah blah blah, and it was
Oh.
just this is the job for me.
Done.
So and it was at
Comics welcome.
Exactly. So it was at Century City in the Twin Towers,
Oh no shit.
and I go in as a young guy. He's like 6 years older than me, cute, funny, and I have a great interview, and then I don't hear from him. I think it was on a Friday, so. I'm waiting on Monday. I don't hear from him. I called him on Tuesday, and I said, I'm just checking in to see, what's going on. He actually answered. I think he answered his phone, and he said, "Oh, you got the job."
Forgot to tell you.
And he said, "Come in tomorrow." No, take tomorrow off. Come in on Wednesday. And I worked for him for 4 years, and I'm still. He's one of my closest friends.
No
I just went to
shit.
his oldest son's wedding.
What a! I mean, that's
Yeah.
how the world works.
So what was cool about that job was that he was so supportive of me wanting to be a comic. So if I ever had an audition, and I actually got my first stand-up gig. It was Just for Laugh. Last Laugh, I believe the name was. It's up in Sacramento, and that was my first paid stand-up gig.
Wow, at a
And-
festival, no less. Wow.
No, it wasn't a festival. It was.
Oh, at the club.
At the club.
It was just. For
It was
laughs, wasn't
just for
it? I
laughs in
think so.
Sacramento,
I
right?
think so.
So he would always let me take off and do what I wanted to do, just as long as I could put a body in my seat. So like I had my roommate who, and this was before computers.
Yeah.
So she had no idea how to type or anything, but she would answer phones, and he
somebody,
really
yeah.
liked her. So she would fill in for me. I had
It's a
a
willing
cousin.
body.
I had my cousin Lenny, who we always called Cousin Lenny. Lenny would come in,
Hello.
and he would fill in for me. And then I did a one of these conventions called the NACA. It was a NACA convention, and it's where comedians go, and you're seen in front of all the people who buy talent for campuses. And I did really
This
well.
is the college tour.
This is the
thing,
college
right? Yeah.
tour. And I did really well, and I got a bunch of dates, and then I got a bunch of stand-up dates back east, and I quit, and I moved back to New York, and that's when I really, really got my comedy sea legs
Wow.
back there, and I.
How long were you out here for that stint? What was
Around
that?
4 years.
The whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, 4 years.
Sorry,
And-
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, no.
I'm building the timeline. In my
Yeah,
head.
yeah. So I went back to New York, and it was great. There was so many more clubs were happening there, and I was a much
And you're coming
stronger
with
act.
jobs now and with
Exactly.
credits and yeah.
And
Did that feel good when you come? I mean, that's coming home again in a
exactly,
big way.
exactly. It was great. It was great because the places that I couldn't get on stage, I can get on stage now.
Yeah. Well, you're coming home with some clout versus
Yeah.
come with your tail between your legs, which is the common tail.
Right. That's
It's true.
and then not getting any talent.
Right.
You're finishing joke, folks.
So then I did the clubs, and then I started getting there were a lot of local shows that were having comedians like Bill Boggs had
remember Bill
like
Boggs.
comedy. Was it Comedy Tonight? That was the
There
first.
was a Comedy Tonight show.
So I did that, and I started to get like little gigs here and there, and then I
Is it still the 80s?
This is
did
the
you say
80s.
that? Okay,
This
so
is
that
the
probably
80s.
was that show, yeah. Comedy
Yeah.
Tonight.
And then I did Pat Sajak. That was my first late night TV show.
The CBS show?
CBS show.
Oh shit!
Yep.
It was
Wheel of
before,
Fortune.
before Letterman got the CBS show, and it was still
Right.
Carson. He was still a contender against Carson. Arsenio may have been on the air. I don't remember, but Pat Sajak had a couple attempts, and the CBS show was the biggest.
And then I got a gig.
What was that like? I don't mean to cut you off, but obviously I'm into that whole.
It was
I mean, I
so
remember the show.
exciting. It was, I did Star Search, the original Star Search.
How many stars? 3.25 stars.
I didn't get, I did get 3.25. This was a great story. I did the first
Ed
show.
McMahon hosted Stars. Okay.
Did the first show of the season, and I was up against a guy named John Mulrooney. Did you know John Mulrooney?
I know the name from
Okay.
Comedy Sense. He
was
went on. I'm assuming he beat you.
No, he didn't beat me.
Oh, good.
He was touted to win the whole thing, and he made a very big mistake. They had rehearsals before you do the show, like I guess the day or 2 days before the show. And for the comedians, it was really important to be there because you don't know who's going to go on first, and you want to make sure that you don't have conflicting material.
Right.
So I did part of my set. I talked about going to a gym, working out, whatever, and that was part of his set too. But I went on first. He didn't show up for the rehearsal.
I was going to say he didn't know you did it.
And I went on first, and my set was very strong, and I annihilated him. And
Wow.
I was getting thank yous because a lot of people thought he was kind of a jerk back then, and it was funny because when I went to when I went to the taping, I just went by myself. I didn't have a posse, and no friends came with me. And he had Bill Boggs was his manager, and Rick, the other guy who worked with him actually works with Rick Messina, who's a big manager. Anyway,
Baker.
so Rick Baker.
Yeah.
Rich Baker, right?
Rick Baker's the
was the
special
makeup
effects guy. Yeah.
So they came and they were really trying to intimidate me. I mean, it was really bizarre. So
That's the team.
I
That's
kick-
the team
I
for
know,
ya.
really, exactly. He's got his people,
Give
his
me a break.
thugs.
Yep.
And so I kick ass. I beat him. I was getting phone calls from so many people. I remember Colin Quinn, who I was very friendly with at the time. I remember him calling me. He's like, you beat Mulrooney. He was so excited. And then I actually didn't win a ton of episodes, but my scores were very high. And no one went on like a crazy tear that season. And I got into the semifinals.
No shit.
and then I lost.
The comics weren't often. They didn't often get to the semifinals that I remember.
Yeah, and then like guys like Dennis Miller. I mean, really strong comics lost the first time.
Wow.
And
where did you do it? Where was the? Do you remember where the taping was and all that stuff?
oh God, where?
I'm such a nerd. You know what? Like
There
those are
was
the things I
one-
care about.
One of the tapings was at where Nickelodeon is.
That's
now.
what I figured. It was always like it was just a warehouse studio
Just yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Okay.
The one on Hollywood
Sunset
or
Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, by Vine.
It's totally where I was picturing it. Expecting you to say the Palladium or something.
But I was actually really annoyed because the way the rules were is that if any of the judges knew you, they had to excuse themselves. So the audience
Oh.
voted. But when you got into the semifinals,
I don't remember how it worked.
No.
Weren't there only an audience until the semifinals, and then there was, or was it the
Yeah,
other way around?
No. There was an audience. There was something weird with the judge, but all I know
they
is
had
that the
little
judge
tabulators.
they had but all I know is the judge had to excuse themselves. So my third show, I won the first two. My third show, one of the judges was an agent. He wasn't my agent, but we were friendly,
Right.
and he had to excuse himself. And what happened was I tied with the comedian, and with the tie, it went to the judges.
Oh shit!
And if he would have stayed, I would have won because he would have voted for me.
Right.
Then the semifinals, it's the judges who make the decision, and I went up against a guy who was he did cartoon voices and he played guitar. So to me, he's like a prop act. So he wasn't really like a stand-up comic,
No, it's a
which I
birthday
thought
party-
was
birthday
it
party
was
act.
just a novelty act, which I thought was unfair. And one of his agents was a judge, and they kept him
come on.
And I wasn't going to make a stink. I was like,
then
you know,
that's how
I
the
lost.
show was written.
So
You're
I lost to him.
High
Yeah,
class
totally fair with a
lady.
big asterisk. All right, well, you got onto Star Search, not Trek. The guy yesterday was Star Trek. They're all flowing together.
That's right. The judges picked me on Star Trek.
But you started to talk about comedy tonight, or would
Oh yeah. So then I started to get So we were talking about Pat Sajak. So I did Pat Sajak.
That's right.
And then and that was really fun. I mean, he was lovely. He was very, very nice to me, and everybody there was like really cool. And it was just doing a
Did
late
they
night
think
show.
the show was going to go, or were they all
I'm
all knew?
Oh, I think they thought the show was going to go.
They did?
Yeah.
Because there were some of those shows where they were all like, well, let's get 6 weeks of a paycheck because,
Yeah.
it'll hold us over until the next hiatus. And
Some of them knew, and some of them were really gung ho about being a
Yeah.
host.
He just wasn't. He wasn't
he's
right.
not the guy for it.
Yeah, he wasn't.
He's right where he belongs.
Exactly.
With the
Yeah,
wheel.
he's a game show guy.
Yeah.
And then I got a gig on it was called the Comedy Channel back in the day. It was
Before Comedy Central?
Before it was Comedy Central, it was Comedy Channel, and then there was another network called Ha, and
I
they
remember this.
merged.
Ha! Exclamation.
Yes,
I remember that.
and they merged to make
Okay.
Comedy Central.
Yes.
But so I worked at the Comedy Channel. I had kind of like a talk soup type of show. It
love
was
the
a
original Talk Soup.
revolving cast of comics. So there were four of us that had their moment. So I would do one segment, then another, and then
All green screen?
All green screen. Well, no, it wasn't green screen.
That's what I think of when I think of the talk soup.
Yeah, it wasn't green screen. I would introduce clips of comedy movies and comics, and that was kind of my thing. And then
Almost more variety stuff, like Ed Sullivan, more
Yeah.
introductory.
yeah,
Cool.
but there would be like jokes within the copy, and then they were actually really, really cool about letting the comic do their own thing. Like, so I said I want to do a segment where I invite a bunch of comics to come and play poker on the stage, and then we'll order food and actually have a guy come and deliver food. So, Jon Stewart was a good friend of mine, so John came, and all these really fun comics, and it was really cool.
That's awesome. Was he
and
still
then-
Leather Jacket days, obviously?
Exactly.
We both know him too. Yeah.
And then John actually, he and someone else took over. I had to like
Took over the show?
I had a re-audition for the show, which was
For your show?
was
for your show that you created?
demoralizing. New people came in and they wanted to revamp the show, and it was called Short Attention Span Theater. Do you remember?
I remember the show.
Okay.
But that was on Comedy Central when Comedy Central first started.
It became a Comedy Central show.
I remember.
But it
Yeah.
started on the Comedy Channel, and it didn't air. It was only. It didn't air. It aired locally, but you couldn't see it like on regular TV. I mean, it
Well,
was
I had all the New York stations because I was over there too.
right.
So I guess whatever I was probably on your same system. That's so wild. I remember it. Like I feel like I vividly remember it. Was it more of a round table set? Were there chairs like in a semicircle, or am I thinking of something
No,
else?
it was a desk, and he sat. Well, when I did it, I was just I was just a stand-up,
talking head.
just a talking head.
Okay.
And then he teamed up with a woman named Patty Rossborough, who became his co-host.
In my mind, it's early mid-'90s, and Comedy Central's new, and I would come home after school and watch like the Saturday Night Live reruns and that show. I think maybe that's wild.
Yeah, so
I love
but it was
it.
fun. It was great. I had a good run, and then
But the show I'm thinking of was on for a long time. It was not
his
like
show was on for a long time. His show had some years, and then
It was a version of the same thing.
And then I mean, they made it more formal with a desk, and I think they may have had some guests when they did the show as well.
Is that what led to his? I mean, not to talk about Jon Stewart, but is that what led to his talk
Yes.
show, the MTV show, and everything?
Yes, yeah, he
You know,
did.
they had the MTV show, then the syndicated show, then the Daily Show after Craig Ferguson.
He
They
did a show.
formalized
He
it,
did
it
another
sounds like.
show like on Channel 9 in New York for a while.
I remember the Howard Stern show on Channel 9, and I remember Joe Franklin, and I remember
Right,
Richard
exactly.
Bay. I remember all those
Oh
guys.
God, that's so funny, Joe Franklin. That's hysterical. I
well,
did.
it
his
was
show.
a desk and chairs, so I
Yeah,
was watching.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then I stayed in New York a little bit longer after that, and then I had a boyfriend who was in the business, and he moved to.
In what capacity? Another comic?
He was another. Did you know Ken Ober? From Remote Control.
Remote Control.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And Colin, the whole
Yeah,
trifecta
yeah, yeah.
there.
He was
Don't
my.
tell me you were the girl on that show.
I was not the girl
Okay.
on that show. No.
It was a game show
was a
for
game show.
adults on MTV, and they were sitting in Easy Boys. And
It was like it was a trivia show. It was the first
Okay.
game show on MTV. First
Ah.
departure from music videos.
So, are you telling me that you were dating the host of Remote Control?
I was.
Wow.
I was dating him way before then, and then
Wow.
he got the show. But we had an on and off relationship for like 18 years. It was crazy.
That's so wild.
Life
So
with comedians.
It's small world to me, though. It'd be like somebody saying, "Well, you know, when I dated Mark Summers." Like, wait, what?
You did?
Double dare.
no, I know. So then he moved to L.A. He got a gig in L.A. and then I went out soon after, and I'm sure at some point I would have gone out to L.A. I don't know if I would have gone as soon as I did.
Would you have come back though? I mean, because you came out and it was fine, but then you went back and it was really good. So was you're ping-ponging back and forth. Is that just how it goes?
Yeah, I just kind of felt. I mean, I was actually really depressed when I lost the Comedy Central gig because it was so much fun. And I was like,
yours.
yeah. I mean, it was like I started it, and so I just kind of went into I wouldn't say a depression, but I was just kind of bummed
Different place,
that,
sure.
that happened. And being that Kenny moved out, it was like, okay, I'll go out there. There's plenty out in Los Angeles.
timing, really.
The timing was really was right for me, and I was still doing a lot of stand up. I was on the road all the time, and then it just got to a point where I just didn't want to be away from home. I was in a relationship. We had a dog. I just hated being away, and I started. I teamed up with a girlfriend of mine who was a writer, and we started writing spec scripts, and we got an agent. We signed with CAA.
Oh,
Very
boy.
cool.
Yeah.
And then we got a job.
That was the time too, man. Holy crap! Mike Ovitz was there. The whole big deal.
and then we got a gig on our first writing job was Brotherly Love, which was Joey Lawrence
Stop.
and
I
his two
remember
brothers.
this,
Stop.
and the Real Brothers.
And the Real Brothers.
Was it on the
They-
WB or on UPN or one of
It
those?
started on NBC and then it went to the WB. So I wrote on it the second season on the WB.
Funny.
And
Post Blossom.
yes,
Yeah.
and it was a blast because the two guys that ran the show, they were comics back in the day. They were actually the first comics I met standing on line to go on stage in New York.
Really?
That Sunday night when you just went to go try out.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Is
I've
that
known
how
them.
this got put together, or was that just a coincidence?
Well, we were looking for a job, and they hired us based on knowing me, and our spec script.
Awesome.
Of course.
And
I already told you were a good writer when you were 4 years old or whatever you were trying out that thing.
so we're writing on the show, and it was a blast. Other comedians were writing on it, and it wasn't your typical writing situation because they ran it was a tight ship, but it sounds like a contradiction, but it was a very loose atmosphere. So we never stayed late. And they didn't have kids. They just got the work done. They just never wanted to stay late, and they never
Right.
made us stay late.
Was it a multicam show?
It was a
sitcom?
multicam. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a multicam show. And
So they're working all week, but probably only working on the floor maybe 2 days.
we
one
never
night, 2
worked
nights.
on the floor.
Ever?
Really? So no rewrites, no alts on
No,
the
no,
floor, none of
we
that
did
shit?
we did rewrites, but like tape night, because I worked on another show, years later. We were up in a booth, in a room with couches and monitors,
Like behind
so-
the audience, the whole thing, looking down. that
just
kind of-
looking down,
Yeah.
and we were never on the floor. If they needed a joke, we would all just talk about it or whatever. But we were basically just all hanging out there. We'd go out, we'd smoke
That's
pot,
really nice.
we'd come back in. There was a rule that no agents or managers were allowed in that room. And
It sounds like SNL.
I was going to say, it sounds like the writing room at the end of the 9th floor on.
Yeah.
it was the greatest job. And I remember the guys that ran the room said, don't get too comfortable with this, because this is not
It
the
won't
way
be like this again.
it
Not
normally
normal.
is. This is really kind of an anomaly.
Cush job.
It was just the most fun. And we...
Is that
it-
because they
we
were
would-
two guys who'd been to the road like, well, this is our shot at it, so let's just make it cool.
Well, these guys had been running shows for years. Like these, like one of the guys, he worked on Golden Girls, and
Oh, cool.
they were really in with the whole Whit Thomas. It was a Whit Thomas show,
Oh.
so they were in with that crowd.
Oh, that was the time too. Yeah.
So they just, sometimes they would say, "All right," it was Jimmy and John were their names, and it's like, we're gonna, just go into the office. So just hang here. We'll be right back. Sometimes they wouldn't come back for like 3 hours. We'd leave. We would actually leave, go to the Gap. We go shopping. We actually toyed with the idea of maybe going to a movie one day. I mean, it was just the inmates ran the asylum. I mean, it was just insane. So
Where was that show done?
that was done at Sunset Gower.
Oh, okay. So still over there. Nice, same area.
And then after that,
Those are cool.
my girlfriend and I got a job on... the show didn't get picked up for a third season. And we got a job
Whoa.
on Sex and the City.
What?
So I wrote on Sex and the City with
You
my
and your
partner the first
Wow.
season. Yeah,
That was a big deal. Were you here?
I was here.
And you wrote for a New York show. Like
Right.
They were
All the
really,
writing was done here, and then they
Okay.
just shot everything in New York.
That's hilarious because they
Yeah.
made it a big deal that it was all New York.
I think all the writing and everything was here, but they just did the show at Silver Cup and on the streets and everything else.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was amazing. And
That's
my
awesome.
friend, Michael Patrick King, actually was a friend of mine because we knew each other from... He was a stand-up comedian.
Oh, okay.
So,
He was?
yes. He started as a
didn't know
team,
that.
King and Mendy. He did an act with this woman, Lisa Mende, and then they split up, and then he had a solo act.
No
Wow.
way. Who knew?
I know.
I love that you know so many people. You know what I mean? Like the names sometimes, I'm usually pretty good with that, but you've gotten everyone I haven't known. I love it. Good team.
We're a good team.
All right, so you're working in television now. You're working on big shows now.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying this process now? I mean,
Yeah.
have things turned around and you're
Yeah,
happy
yeah,
again?
it was good. And, and I was still doing stand-up. I wasn't doing it as much, but I was still doing it.
Okay.
Um,
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You learned that you
stand-up
could do
and
the
working
same
on shows.
bit by now.
yes. Yes. And I did. I took advantage of that. And,
Oh, you work out the material.
But kind of like later on in my stand-up career, and then like I never talked to you about making the transformation. I did impressions in my act for maybe 3 or 4 years, and then I threw it all away because I felt like my personality, like no one really knew who I was, and I kind of thought it was like hacky to be an impressionist. So I wanted to just be me. Like there were comedians that I emulated, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So later on in my
Sounds like you
career,
grew. I mean,
yeah,
it's growth.
absolutely. And then later on in my career, you talk about the writing. I started to do a lot more topical humor. So then you have to write all the time. So it was just
To be on your game.
exactly. So reading the paper every day, watching the news, and just
Staying
being
more present.
hyper alert of what's going on in the world.
Real world versus the 15 minutes I'm going to do tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Wild. Gosh.
When was that?
That was 90s.
Okay.
That was it was 90. I'm trying to think. I think it was like 94, and then Sex and the City was around 95, 96,
yeah.
97, somewhere in there,
97 sounds.
something like that. And then my writing partner and I split up. She wanted to write on her own. We weren't. I don't even know if she tried to get back on the show. I partnered up with somebody else, and we did not. And I went in, actually, we wrote a couple of spec scripts together, and we didn't get asked to do Sex and the City as this new team. And a really good friend of mine, because I was telling you earlier that I'm a big sports fan.
Yes.
He was asked to do a radio show on WNEW, a morning show. And
The New York Fox station.
it was this iconic. It's the station that I grew up listening to, and it was a rock station.
Yep.
Scott Muni.
Yeah. Scott and Todd in the morning.
Scott and Todd. What's his name? Dave. God, what was his name? There's another guy who was like an iconic guy. Anyway, on the station.
They were like out of the...
Dave Herman,
there you
actually.
go. But it was a Z100 AM, right? Isn't that...
No,
that
it was... it was 97.1. I don't know if...
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I think...
it became Hot 97 or something like that
Yeah,
later. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes, I booked comedians on Hot 97.
I might be making that up. I might have it wrong.
Yeah,
but,
no,
you know.
it was Hot 90... I don't know.
I think
It was...
that's here.
It was...
I'm
Yeah,
confusing
that's
the
out here.
two.
So it was 97.1. It was, such a... It was iconic. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just the coolest station. And the fact that I listened to it when I was a kid was just unbelievable. So he got it. He was being touted to be the host, and he wanted to bring a co-host with him. So he pitched me, and I went and met with the station. And I didn't even have to audition or anything. Just the fact that he wanted me,
Yeah.
I got the gig.
You strike me as somebody who already I'm thinking would be excellent at radio. Your voice is great. Your way to... You just keep everything moving.
It was fun.
Were you good at that job? Did
Yeah,
you enjoy
it was great. It was one of the greatest jobs I've ever had in my life. I mean, it was kind of an extension of doing stand-up in a way without having to look at an audience and be concerned that guy's not laughing.
Yeah.
Stand up without the distractions?
Yeah, it was great, and it was fun. And then I lived around the corner from the station, so it kind of became like a Jack Park kind of thing. Like, oh, funny thing happened on
I
the
love
way to work today.
Yes.
Good
Good or bad.
Yeah, exactly. And there was still music. We were doing talk during like interstitial talk, and
Okay.
then maybe 3/4 of the way through our reign, it became all talk. And that's when
Format
it was just
change.
a blast because we
Awesome.
had comedians on every Friday. We had Broadway actors. We had authors. We had Genovese from the Crime Boss family.
Oh my
Bill
gosh.
Genovese.
Oh
He
my
came
gosh.
on. No, Bill Bonanno, who I guess it was part of maybe Genovese. He came on, and he was funny, and we were saying to him we're afraid to ask you these questions because we don't want to get whacked.
You don't wanna know the answers,
And
yes.
he would just laugh his head off. He came on a couple of times. Dan Rather, Eric Idle. We had
Wow.
the greatest guests. But we were opposite Howard Stern, which was not easy.
No.
And we stayed on the Mechanical Bull for like a year and a half, and then we ended up.
How many hours
leaving.
a day were you doing?
4.
Yeah, it's 4.
a lot.
That's a standard. That's wow.
Yeah,
It is so much.
It was grueling, and we were morning radio, so I got up at 3-something in the morning,
Yeah.
Right.
and that
Going
was
live at 5 probably or 6 maybe.
5.
Yeah.
and then it went
On the air at 5.
We were
Good morning,
5.
folks.
We were 5 to 9, and then it moved to 6 to 10, and that was the greatest thing in the world.
It's like a matinee.
But my life was completely turned upside down, because I never
Well,
went
night-
out.
Yeah, you couldn't do stand up anymore because
But
it was
I
your
did
sleeping hours.
I did stand up one night, usually one night on the weekend. I would do Saturday night, and then I used to perform at Caroline's all the time. So if I got a week at Caroline's, I would do it.
Okay.
And I would come home from work. I had a dog that I adopted, and I would sleep. I would take my dog for a walk, come back, sleep for I slept in shifts, 4 hours, get up, have dinner. I had to watch TV because we talked about stuff.
Right, you got to be current.
And I would tape stuff, so we would bring it in. We had a producer, but we had to produce a lot of the content, and that was it. I was kind of like a hermit in a lot of ways. I hardly ever went out.
Did you have fun during that time, though?
I did.
Because it sounds like everything that we do it doesn't matter because it's for the product that you're doing, which
Sure.
is the fun, cool
The
thing.
long game is everything. Everything fulfills the long game.
Absolutely. It was a
Deep fun.
really great gig, and I actually tried to do radio when I came back. I don't know if you remember this. There was it was a radio a comedy radio network that started. It was called Comedy World.
No.
And it was on by Santa Monica. It was near Jefferson. It was a trailer park, and all the trailers were different shows, and comedians were given like 2-hour shows. So like Kenny had a show
That's
that
a
he
great
did.
idea.
Alan Havey had a show.
Oh,
Bobby
I used to
Slayton
love
had a show, and that lasted for a little while. So I didn't get a show, but I would fill in every now and then. So I always joked that I was everybody's Joy Philbin, you know.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
And it was
Kathy Lee's away.
It was so funny because I was doing Bobby Slayton's show. Kevin Pollak was the guest.
wow.
Bobby was late. He was stuck in
Oh,
traffic.
make a note of that. Bobby's supposed to be here next week.
Oh yeah. So he happened to be late that day, and Kevin, who is an amazing impressionist, he was doing Bobby. So I was hosting the show with Kevin doing Bobby.
Oh, weird.
And then Bobby
But then
called
Bobby
it,
would come.
and then Bobby called in to let us know that that he's running late, and we're anyway. So then it was just a very, very funny situation.
Gosh.
Really funny. Holy
I love it. Well, you seem to experience some serendipity. It seems like whatever, even when things aren't going well, you kind of just keep on going, and then things sort of all culminate and come together. Is that you? Is that how life works for you? Is that something you do? Or
I think life has just kind of worked that way, for me. I mean, I have fallen down many times and picked myself up, and there were more like times where I thought, oh God, like one of my biggest disappointments in my career is that I didn't do the Tonight Show with Johnny, but I got the Tonight Show with Johnny.
what is happening here?
I got
Tell
it.
the story. Shut up.
And then I was waiting for a date, and one of the times that I was supposed to do it, I was with Kenny, and we had a rule that when we would go on vacation, we wouldn't take our phones with us. This was when you just, So we went to Mexico. We went to Rosarita Beach.
Not even that far.
I know. Come
Just
back.
barely out of town.
Come back, and I get a message on my phone that someone had canceled. This was the year This was Johnny's last year.
Yeah, 92.
So everybody was trying to get their last Carson in.
And Jim called you.
Jim called me, left me a message saying, somebody canceled, and we'd love for you to do the show this Friday night. So I missed out.
Came and went.
And then the rest of the year I couldn't get on because there was just no spot.
Well,
Yeah,
So-
Robin Williams wanted to do it. Sorry.
So
That's
that was
crazy.
So it was so disappointing, but whatever. And then, but
That's
Jim
amazing.
made sure that Jay, who I knew, put me on early in his reign, and he honored that. And
How was that for you? That was a weird time.
it was a weird time, but it was great. I mean,
I mean, it must have been good for you to do the show and everything,
Right.
but that was a weird ass time.
It really
You were
was.
still in the old Johnny studio and all that.
Oh
when
yeah.
you did it
Oh yeah.
before they moved across the hall to make it the Jay Leno Tonight Show.
Oh. I think I only went to the Leno one.
Right,
the
Studio
Leno,
3. Yeah, the
that
old Studio
studio.
1 was Johnny's studio and Steve Allen before that and stuff. Very, very cool.
Yeesh.
It must be have been neat to stare up at that rake of audience.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
God.
That's when I first moved out here, I snuck into that studio so I could go look at it. I mean, it was the end of Howie Mandel's daytime show at that time. But I went in there just to look at the seats and put myself back in, the Johnny days.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a thing that other comics would do when they were actually standing there, or if I'm just a weirdo.
No, it was cool. I mean, just to be there, I
Yeah.
mean, that was
the curtain's a different color, but it's still the curtain,
Exactly. I mean, I was doing the Tonight Show. It was kind of the Tonight Show light,
Asterisk.
and,
There was
you
an
know, there
asterisk.
was an asterisk, yeah. But I was grateful.
It was the
for-
Helen Kushnick Tonight Show at that point, really.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was
so
different.
yeah.
Oh man! All right, so that's a regret, but it's not really your fault. It just kind of
It just
how it worked out.
So it's a panel story. and then I got the greatest job in my entire career, which is I got to work on the Osbournes.
Now this is something I wanted to talk about. Now we're into the few things I do have on the card. The Osbournes, of course, I immediately go to Ozzy trying to program the BMW to call home. The whole thing. The show itself, I thought, was brilliant. How involved were you in it? Because that was the first reality show I really ever actually. I didn't get into the real world or anything.
We were involved as producers in post more than we were involved.
They capture it. You write the story.
There was no writing on the show. There was no producer's hand really in the field, except that when the first season I started, I was a segment producer, so I sat in Video Village with the director and watched the monitors to see the action that was going on.
Where are they, in the garage of the house? Where is that?
There was a room in the house.
Okay.
Nobody told Ozzy, Sharon, the kids, anybody what to do or what to say. It was pure reality. A lot of times we didn't even know what was happening.
You're right.
Nothing was plotted
Just
out.
keep rolling.
You just rolled camera. We shot. One of the producers figured out that for every 500-minute shot, we used a minute.
Whoa.
And
That
what
makes sense with all the cameras you had rolling and everything. I believe it.
you just shot.
It must have been an editorial nightmare. I can't even imagine.
Not really.
I mean, it's nice to have everything.
The reason why it wasn't was because we were on the ground level of something absolutely new. So nobody had any preconceived ideas of, well, let's do it because...
Yeah, you're not doing it wrong no matter what.
Exactly. And they gave us a lot of freedom. And this was the days before production companies. So we were independent contractors working for MTV. So there was no middleman.
It's not Buna
There was
Murray
no
or
one
any of
else in
those
the
things.
kitchen
Wow.
telling you, put more salt on it, take pepper out. I mean, nothing. So...
That's
and then
super rare in
it-
reality
it-
TV.
Oh, it
I
just
mean,
is not.
every
Well, it's
television
non-existent.
period, yeah,
It just
in the
doesn't.
creative
It
world.
doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
Plus, we had enough time to look through all the footage to make an episode. So you were basically a slave to the footage.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they let us be really, really creative. Like we didn't manipulate what Ozzy said or what anybody said, but we can do things like one time Ozzy and Sharon were going to London and the kids were going to be home alone and they had a party and let me backtrack. So we couldn't get access to the airport, so we couldn't shoot them in the plane. So they were in this like SUV kind of town car-y type of ride to the airport, and it kind of looked like a private plane inside. So we got footage online.
It was a people mover probably, and it had the small. I totally envision what you're talking about.
We found footage of a pilot punching the instruments above. So we inserted that, and then we tilted the car to make it look like it was taking off like a plane. So we were able to do all this kind of fun stuff.
And it wasn't even lying. It's just one of those painting a story. You think whatever you think.
It was fun manipulation that didn't compromise and put words in anybody's mouth.
Right.
But like we put together a three-way conversation when they got to London. We put together a three-way conversation of Sharon and Ozzy talking to Jack and Kelly, and Jack and Kelly were like in different rooms, and we just took footage of what was happening during that moment and put together this conversation that didn't really...
Right. Theoretically, they were all happening at the same time.
Right.
Just everyone was individual, and you
exactly,
made it into
and we made it into like a three-way conversation.
Love it.
But for the most part, and I would say really, it was the purest reality that I ever worked on.
You got an authentic family there who's not trying to be anything else.
No, and you
They're not gonna, in fact, they're not going to be anything.
They
you want them
weren't
to be.
going to be.
Right.
You know, like you weren't going to
It's the
tell
best possible subject matter.
Yeah, you weren't going to tell Ozzy what to say, nor would you want to tell Ozzy what to say,
You're gonna
and you
ruin
weren't
Ozzy.
going to tell the kids what to say. They just did what they did, and it was. I've been chasing that high the rest
Really?
of my career.
No kidding.
Because it was so fun and so creative. I watched all the footage and never minded that I watched all the footage. If I had to, and we didn't work crazy hours, but if I had to come in on the weekend, I didn't care. If I had to stay late, I didn't care. Like you were talking about all the work because you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
The editors were great. We actually, one of the editors and I, in that particular episode for that scene when they were having a party, we couldn't find a song that represented what we wanted, so we wrote our own song, and he wrote the music, and they gave us credit. They let us use the song.
That's awesome.
And then it was published because it was on the show.
Exactly.
Wow, that is so cool.
So I did that for every season, and it was just. It was like if you told people you worked on the Osbournes, it was like being a doctor. You'd go into a
I
restaurant
remember.
and it was like, oh,
Here's your seat
you
right
work on
over
the
here.
you work on the Osbournes? Come this way.
Yeah.
You
It was
know?
magical.
It really was.
I was a fan first, and then when I worked out here, like people I knew worked with the Osbournes, and like I think the show was ending, but like it was a magical time. everything you guys did changed the face of so many.
I still can't drive up Doheny without looking over the
Yeah.
fence, at the door there, the gate.
Right. Well, I was actually there the night when Sharon threw meat in the neighbor's
Oh,
yard.
the whole thing. Yeah.
We were like, I
remember that.
can't believe she's doing that.
We couldn't believe it as viewers. It was nuts. That's the type of thing you say, a producer made them do that. And it's like, no, that was just them.
But
That's
what,
how they handled things.
But what producers did, and this was the fun too, when I said that we sat and worked with the director, if we saw something, we had the sense that, okay, get a close-up here. We knew in post, because we were post-producers, that we were going to do something with slow-mo. Like Jack had that dog, that bulldog,
Little dog,
Lola. And he was estranged from the dog for a little while, and then they reunited. So we're at the house. The dog comes. It's at night. The pool is lit. It's very romantic. And the dog comes into the pool, and we said to the director, "This is the way we want this to be. This is
the sexy saxophone
this is
in my mind.
this is a love story."
Yes.
So then you see Jack moving, and then you see the dog moving, and it became this romantic scene, and that's exactly how we cut it, and it was just magic.
So good. I'm glad you brought up Jack. Obviously, we never really got to this before, but Mrs. Ryan has MS.
Oh.
And she had relationships and dealings with other famous celebrities who have MS, Jack being one of them. I don't know, but that wasn't going on till long after the show, right? There was nothing
It was
before.
much later.
He was still a kid then, right?
Yeah,
he
he
was
was
a teenager.
Oh yeah, I mean I see him now, and I mean he's a grown man. And
I
he's
forget
a
how
father.
long ago it was. I remember that, yours was a few years, your diagnosis, before it was actually a problem. And I didn't know if it was anything going on way back when. It hits home. That one hits home.
Oh yeah,
obviously.
absolutely. Well, I have a very, very good friend who has MS. Who actually, she was influential in me getting the job on the Osbournes. She was a comedian and a writer. And I don't know if do you know Henriette Mantel?
No, I don't
I
think
do.
so. But
Okay. So
I want to
Henriette,
now.
Is it New York then, or because she is now? Right?
she's in New York now.
Yeah.
But she was out here.
Okay.
And our mutual friend Jeff Stilson, who was one of the
Yeah.
executive producers who created the Osbournes.
Yeah.
He did?
Yeah. He and a guy named Greg Johnston.
He was a head writer on Letterman for a long time. too.
Yeah. So I was actually working on a sitcom that I was very unhappy at, and Jeff came in one day a week as a consultant and came in to do Punch Up, and they needed one more segment producer on the Osbournes, and Henriette pitched me, and he was like, "Yes, definitely have her. She
That's
hates
how
her job. Bring her in." So I came on, and I remember saying to them that if this were the job that I had the rest of my life at that salary, which wasn't a lot because I was making TV, like network TV money, and I took a big cut to work on the Osbournes. I said, if that was my job for the rest of my life, with this,
Done deal.
I'll do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
That's
Henriette.
awesome.
So Henriette.
Serendipity, by the way.
Yeah,
Again.
exactly. So I did a ton of MS walks with Henriette and a
Awesome.
bunch of friends.
Why don't
so.
you rub it in? I'm just kidding.
That always does make me laugh. And they're like, MS walk. I'm like, none of us walk there. It's
Well,
not
she was
funny.
good friends with Terry Garr too. For
she
years.
was?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
That's obviously a big one for us, Dave and Terry here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
No, I know. For me, it's a big deal. A lot of people don't. I mean, you obviously do sitting here, but a lot of people out there don't know Terry Garr.
Oh.
The whole Letterman connection. They both really got famous together on that show. Sitting there.
Oh,
And
yeah,
she
she was-
did have MS during that time and wasn't talking.
And
about
wasn't
it.
talking about
Oh,
it.
I
yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch it now, knowing, hindsight's 20/20, but I mean, her walk over to the chairs is worse and worse each
I've
time
noticed
over
that
years.
change. I didn't know no one knew.
And yet she's just still, just like you, so stinking delightful.
Yeah. Just
You know what I mean? Just one of those people.
yeah,
Beautiful
really,
in
and
every way.
so funny.
So funny.
So funny.
Yeah.
I still can't go to Mr. Mom. Even the fucking one she's not supposed to be funny in, and she's funny in that too. With the, this means something. It's important. The mashed potatoes. Richard Dreyfuss. What am I thinking of here? Close Encounters. All right. So are we done with the Osbournes?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. Well,
yes.
right from that was another MTV show, The Newlyweds.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Now, here's the deal. I didn't bring it up because I like it, but I do remember it. And it was also a big cultural phenomenon, maybe not as big as the Osbournes, but holy shit, when that was going on, it was her and her little sister were big in the music world. And then
Oh,
her
I
and her
watched
husband, she and her husband, had this whole thing, and it was big. Doing the same thing Did that come right after? How did
It,
that
it
all
came
come
right after, and that was
Who am I thinking of? Is Jessica Simpson
and Nick Lachey
yeah.
from 98 Degrees.
Yeah. Oh,
I
I
didn't.
know.
I didn't.
Oh,
Such
he
a
was a
nerd.
boy band guy?
He was
Yes.
a boy band. He and his brother Drew
Yes.
were in that band.
I'm watching talk shows. I didn't know anything about that.
I had no idea who
They
they
was
were.
just some good-looking guy.
I had no. I
Really?
didn't know who Jessica Simpson was. I knew of 98 Degrees, but I didn't know that Nick. I didn't know the name Nick Lachey. And
Listen, there's tears to those boy bands. If it wasn't Justin Timberlake, you had to really like something about it.
exactly. So that was that show was pretty much as was it as much fun? It was a similar situation,
Similar
you know.
experience, right? Because you're just kind of camping out, capturing everything, and
Yes.
then you make the show in post.
Yes, and they, I mean, there was just so much fodder because they were such polar opposites, and everybody thought, oh, you wrote Chicken by
That's
the
what I was
Sea,
going to bring up, of course.
and I was
remember
like,
this?
no, we didn't.
Tuna fish or chicken? What is this?
Yeah, they were
I
eating a
almost
tuna fish
asked about
sandwich.
it. If you've been around her at all, no one wrote it.
No one wrote it. No one wrote it. I mean, I remember she was out by the pool, and there was a rat that, had been dead for a little while that was like right by the pool. And Nick said something about, it's rigor mortis. And she said, rigor what?
I remember that one too. It's a meme. It'd be a meme now.
But the favorite thing on that show was there were crows that were flying over and coming to the balcony of where the back of their house.
Are they ravens, maybe? Sense something was...
Well, it reminded me of the movie The Birds.
Oh,
right?
Tippi Hedren, sure.
Tippi Hedren, right? So I, as a producer, I wanted to do some fun reenactment kind of stuff and do an homage to the birds. So I in the morning when I'd walk my dogs, there's a park near my house, and I saw like a ton of crows. And I was like, oh my God. So I went back home. I had a video camera, and I just shot all this footage. And then one day I had a meeting with one of the executive producers, and he had a window behind his chair, and I looked and I saw a bunch of birds on a telephone wire, and I'm talking to him, and I'm talking to him, but I'm like looking and I'm talking to him, and he's like, you're so distracted, what's going on? And I said, there's a bunch of birds. I have to tell somebody to go out and shoot this because I want to capture the moment where they all fly off. So we made this birds-like episode, and it was hysterical.
So you get cameras rolling, and then you get somebody out there or something, and then they all flutter away, right?
They actually just flew. They just flew away on their. I don't even know. It just happened. It was just
serendipity.
But there were moments like that. But what was so great was that because you were taking footage and making shows from footage, you had to be so creative. And like there was one episode I'll never forget. We did all this cool stuff with just like sound. Like Nick was in the garage and he was sweeping. So I said to the editor, just like amp up the volume on the sweeping. And then it kind of connected to other moments in the episode where Nick was playing pool, and then he was taking the brush
on the felt or something.
on the felt,
yeah.
and so everything kind of connected with little pieces of sound, and it was just it was a creative dream, really, because nobody was telling you to do any different, so you can just throw anything out. And for the most part, like there was one of my favorite episodes. Jessica hated doing laundry. I mean, she was so undomesticated. So she, from her, they had a balcony from the bedrooms to the hallway, the foyer.
Oh,
So-
like a great room looking down, kind of a
exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So she took all this laundry and was throwing it, and it just piled and piled and piled, and you could see the point of view from the living room. You could see out and see the pile of clothes. And I said to the editor, I want it to be like that movie, The Blob. Like I wanted
Steve McQueen.
I wanted to just grow and grow, and I want
the music
and
and
I
the whole
wa-
bit.
exactly,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
want her to be sitting because she was like she wouldn't do the laundry. She would it just grew and grew, and I said I want her to be sitting in the living room and just her point of view of staring at it, and then we see her, and then she's staring, and we just kept on changing the point of view, and it kept on growing and growing and growing, and it was just
love
things
it.
like that
Yeah.
that were so much fun that kind of fell off on other shows. Like
Well, you're directing it after the fact, which is kind of wild.
yeah,
too.
yeah. It was really just.
Well, good for you. So
fun.
that's a creative thing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then the next thing here was Top Chef.
Top Chef. Yeah,
That's a big one.
that was a big show. That was great. That was really fun for someone who
Your
doesn't
style.
cook.
You don't cook?
Not really. My husband cooks. I
But
don't.
you didn't have to like be. I always assumed everyone on those shows like was really knew their stuff. Like within
Foodies?
yeah.
You learned how to be a foodie working on it, but it wasn't criteria.
Okay.
I just, got the job. A friend of mine was, I
Wow.
think he was a co-exec on the show, or I think he was co-executive producer, and he worked on the Osbournes with me too. And I had an interview with the company, and then the fact that he knew me and worked with me, they just hired me. And it's funny that you say that because one of my pet peeves of what's happening in reality television today is that if you don't specifically work in a certain genre or haven't had that experience, like it's really hard for me to get a job on a crime show because I never worked on a crime show. But the only way
weird.
to work on a crime show, is to
The old days, like getting
is
in
to
the
do
union.
it. It's like
Yeah.
it's like being a waitress. It's like, well, I've never waitress. Well, then I'm not going to hire you. I said, but the only way for me to be a waitress is for you to hire me. So it's just this vicious cycle that's happening now in reality TV. It's so specific, even to the point where if you haven't worked for a certain production company, like Bravo,
Right.
they want Bravo people,
Yeah.
and
A lot of them are like that.
and that was never the thing. And I look at it as like, as far as the genre, I'm a storyteller. So I don't
Yeah, you can work
have
anywhere.
to have gone to law school to, law shows. I know they not every person
They
that's
have
written on a
expert
law
pro-
show
they produce
is a lawyer or went to law school. So that's something that's very frustrating today. It's really blocking out a lot of people that I think can do the job.
It was getting in the union when I was a kid. That was the thing. It was like, well, you needed the hours to get in the union, but you can't get the job unless you're in the union. It was like a crazy thing, but it seems to be the same kind of a catch-22.
Right.
All right. Well, then, real quick, I didn't. We've been talking for almost an hour and a half. I didn't even realize
Oh
that.
my
So
God.
this is fantastic. I do want to hit the marathon. You just ran a marathon,
I did.
the LA marathon.
The LA Marathon.
Such a big deal.
That's a personal accomplishment, so I don't want to skip over it. That's a big deal.
Thank you. Whew. It's unbelievable.
How was it? Was it just the past one that just
Yeah, I
happened?
just did the past one. I started running around 4 years ago, and it kind of came out of me going.
You just finished?
Well, you know what? It felt like that.
Yeah, there you go.
I was kind of going through a kind of a difficult time in my life. I was, career stuff, and I wasn't working for a little while, and I just started to run, and it helped me emotionally. And then I joined a running club, so we run every Saturday. So when I started, I was like, "There's no way in the world I'm ever going to run a marathon," because probably 3/4 of the people in the group had run marathons, and that was their thing.
Oh, so that was okay. That's
But a
why
lot of
they
people
there.
were running halves,
Okay.
and some people were just walkers, They
Just to
would
do it.
just to do it.
Yeah.
So
It's impressive to me.
I said I'm never going to run a marathon, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to run one." I said, "You know what? I am totally satisfied with doing a half. 13.2 miles, 13.1
That's
miles
good.
are perfect for me." Well, it came up that the LA Marathon was happening, and there were people in the group that said that they were done with marathons, and then they said to me, "You should really do it. You're going to be sorry if you just don't do one, just to do it." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "And if you do it, we're all going to do it with you. All the people who've said no,
That's
I'm
pretty
done."
rad.
That's awesome.
So
I mean, that's fair.
so that really
That's
meant
fair.
a lot to me. But the thing is, it was It was really hot. It was very hilly. It was really hard. But during my training, like 3 weeks before the marathon, I ran 26 miles. It's 26.2 is a marathon. I ran 26. And the day of the marathon, I thought, it would be great if you can just take the 26 miles and transfer them like credits from a college. Can't I just do that and then just do the point two?
Yeah, I'll just pick it up at the end there. Pick up the spare.
But because when I did the 26, I got up at 4 something in the morning. There were no hills. It was really cool. There was a little drizzle.
Yeah.
And I did it in like less than 6 hours. And I felt fine. But the day of the marathon, they started a little late. It was hot and it was hilly. Because you run from Dodger Stadium to Santa Monica.
It's nuts. I used to live on the path.
The ravine and everything. That is a hassle.
Did you wear shoes?
Did I wear
shoes?
What do you mean?
Some people don't wear shoes when they run marathons.
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the weird toe rubber.
Those are
Oh, is that the same thing?
No, people are barefoot.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that from like high school track and stuff like that.
I used to live
distances.
on Doheny, and it was right on the marathon path, and we would just see black feet, like dirty feet, like.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
I know. I mean, just stepping on stuff.
Yeah.
There's pebbles, and then you're running on the street, and it's hot.
Yeah. Right. Blacktop. Holy smokes!
Insane.
That didn't even occur to me.
Finished a
I'm thinking of all the
marathon.
broken glass and everything
That's
else.
a big deal. You finished a marathon.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Thank you.
It wasn't even like a life goal. It was sort of a last minute thing.
It was a last minute thing.
Last minute goal.
But
That's even more impressive.
so people were like, when's your next one? And I said, oh no, this marathon is an only child. I am not going to run another one. And
you did it. It's
I
off
did
the
it.
list.
Exactly.
Before you leave, I want to talk about you just started a new podcast.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah,
real quick?
yeah.
All right. Is it out yet? I mean,
yeah.
can people listen?
Yeah,
Okay.
we launched it yesterday, actually.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's called Culture Pop. It's with my buddy Steve Mason, who you may know if you follow sports. He's a.
I know the name.
He has a show on ESPN LA.
Yeah.
An afternoon show, Mason in Ireland.
Yep.
So Steve and I, he was the guy that I did the radio show with in New York.
Oh, you're doing this podcast.
So I'm doing this with him. It's not a sports podcast,
Okay.
but we will have sports people on, and sports may come into play, but it's
Sure.
not really the focus.
This makes me very happy, though, and that was such an enjoyable time for you
Yes.
doing that work that you get to maybe do a little bit
Yeah.
of that work. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's been 20 years since we were partners in New York. So
For the NEW show?
yes,
Holy shit.
yeah,
That's super neat.
First of all, everything's been 20 years, and I got to wrap my head around that. I forget.
it's overwhelming.
How about social media? I'm going to take a video of you. Do you have
Oh,
social
yeah.
media?
Oh yeah, well I have on Twitter.
Twitter, Instagram.
I'm on Instagram.
What are your handles?
It's S Kolinsk at S Kolinsk. And
Take the I off.
yeah, no, it's a Y actually.
The Y. Sorry. Oh, fail.
We'll put that up as well. All right. Well, the last thing on my list, we don't really have time to talk too much about it, but we probably have a mutual friend in maybe Bob Reed. You did Last Comic Standing?
But he wasn't on it when I did
I
it.
see.
I
Okay.
did it the last season.
The most recent one?
Yes.
Oh, we enjoyed that. We enjoyed that very much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and Jeff Stilson actually worked on it with me.
Oh, no kidding.
Awesome. What was he on it?
He was a head writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
How fun.
Was that a fun show, Last Comic? I mean, it's a fun show to watch. Was that a fun show to work on?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. The only thing that got a little frustrating every now and then is that comedy is very subjective.
Yep.
So when you're working with the powers that be, you're like, oh, I don't really like that joke, and it's like, what are you kidding me? That's like the funniest joke in
That's
their
the
act. And
reason
it's
we're
like,
doing this show,
really?
yeah.
That joke is horrible. And and what comic should get a full set, and what comic should just be in a montage. And so we would butt heads every now and then with stuff like that.
The
but
usual stuff.
The
though.
usual stuff.
Not like your old days of reality TV.
Not everything can be perfect and easy and serendipity. Gee whiz.
No, oh, I know.
Sue, you are an absolute delight. I hope that you've enjoyed talking to us. I've thoroughly enjoyed this
Yeah.
conversation.
Oh, this has been a blast. You
Okay.
guys are great.
All right. Well, feel free to come back anytime if you
Thank
want to talk
you.
about your
Please.
podcast or whatever.
Cool.
You have an open invite. You are welcome here anytime.
Oh,
And
thank you.
Please tell Kathy Ladman that we both said hello because we love her.
Love.
I will.
Hi,
I will.
Kathy.
And I do
Nice.
too.
Mrs. Ryan, what do we have tomorrow?
Tomorrow we just.
That's
Gus.
right. We've got Gus Seifert coming in tomorrow. That's pretty exciting. There we go. He's a guitar player, but we know him through Porsche stuff. Comes up to Breakfast Club, and we've had Tommy King sit here before. He's Maroon 5 and stuff. We actually met Tommy through Gus. I don't know. We'll let Gus tell you who he plays with, but some of the biggest musicians you've ever known in the history of the world. Roger Waters. And that's what's going on tomorrow. Friday we'll be at Breakfast Club up at Newcomb's, but we will see you tomorrow before that. Mrs. Ryan, I love you so very much. Sue, we love you so very much. We love you at home. Please love one another, and we will see you tomorrow.
Oh, that was fun.
Thanks. Very fun.
You know your shit, so that means a lot.
You should just push the microwave at the end. That's the best.